We're going to continue in our series called Direct Message, where last time we talked about prayer. And do you guys remember what we talked about the first week when we talked about prayer? It wasn't last week because of student takeover, but the week before. It's kind of awkward to pray sometimes. Yeah? What else? Yeah, doing it with your families, yeah? We talked about how it's important to be honest and real in your prayers, that not to use fake words in your prayers, right? Don't just say the lingo because that's what you think you're supposed to say, but pray with earnest and honest prayers. That's what we talked about week 1. We're going to continue week 2. And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes, especially when I was your age, I felt very awkward about praying not because I was afraid to pray in front of people, but because I felt like I didn't always know what to pray for. Like how many of you've gone to pray and you're like, "Dear God, thank you for today that I'm alive and for this food that I'm about to eat, and please help me to get a good grade on that project that I forgot to start, so amen, I'm going to go work on that project because I just remember that's due tomorrow." And then I would forget about the rest of that. And that would basically conclude my prayer life when I was in middle school, right? And so there's times, how many of you guys, you go to pray and you don't know what to pray about? Like, it feels forced. It feels like, I know I should pray, but I'm at a loss for words. I don't know what to pray about. So, in week 1, we talked about it's important to be real and honest with your prayers, but this week we're going to talk about the nitty-gritty, the practical, on what it means and what it looks like to actually pray. I'm going to give you guys some tools so that you can leave here today and you could have like an hour-long prayer if you wanted. I mean, maybe you can work up to that. But you're going to have some practical steps on what to pray for and how to make it real and authentic in your own life. So we're going to get into that today. But before we get right into that, have you guys ever heard of the part of the brain called the anterior cingulate?
No.
Okay? You raised your hand. Do you know what that part of the brain does?
No.
Anybody?
No.
This is what it looks like on the brain. You were here first hour. You don't count.
It does something.
Yeah.
Is it what makes alligators angry?
It is not, but it's a good guess. The anterior cingulate is the part of the brain that helps you see people with compassion. That it helps you to see things from other people's point of view. You know, when you run into somebody and they're the most thoughtful person ever, and they can think, and they can like mirror what you feel before you've even really fully communicated it. Those are people with a developed anterior cingulate cortex, where they can, it's almost like they're sensitive to other people's feelings, and you haven't even communicated your feelings yet. They're the people that are really good at sympathizing, really good at compassion. The anterior cingulate is really good and really important because it's the part of your brain that helps you understand and experience God as personal and compassionate. In other words, it's really easy to think about faith and God and prayer as like this abstract thing in the clouds that's hard to feel like it's real. And people with a developed anterior cingulate are able to be like, no, God is personal and real to me. Right? Conversely, there's a different part of the brain called the amygdala. Do you guys know what this part of the brain is?
It does.
What is this part of the brain? It does help you think.
It sends nerve thingies to your brain.
It's known as the fear center of the brain. Okay? So the amygdala, like, you know when you're stressed out about something, or you're on high alert, or like you're anxious, or you've been anybody like wrestled with anxiety? Like, this is an overactive amygdala. Okay? But it's not a bad thing. Like, stress is good. When you're in a high stress environment and you're able to focus and react quickly, that's a good thing. It's a good thing to have an amygdala that works for you and not against you. When it works against you is when you're unnecessarily afraid and anxious. But having a little bit of fear is good. Like when you're standing on the edge of a cliff and looking down, it's good that amygdala works because it keeps you from getting too close to the edge there. Or when you touch the hot stove and you react and pull back, right? That's a very good thing because your amygdala is telling you, hey, that's hot. Don't do that, right? It's good. It's the part of the brain that's healthy, healthy fear. Where it becomes a problem is when you don't have a developed anterior cingulate enough to balance that out. Right? And so we're going to be talking about that a little bit today because there's been some studies done on the brain in recent years on the anterior cingulate. And it's crazy because what it does is it measures, basically that part of the brain can develop, it can grow, it can get stronger based on prayer, which is crazy. These scientists, these neurologists, they took a control group of people that some of them Christians, some of them non-Christians, some people who prayed more regularly than some who did not. And what they did was they said, I think for 2 months, I want you to go and just spend 10 minutes in prayer. Right? Prayer and meditation. That's all they had to do. And so they took these people and they did brain scans of their anterior cingulate before and after. And after just 2 months of 10 minutes a day, what they found was that anterior cingulate had grown, it was stronger, and those people reported less fear, less anxiety, less stress, overall better quality of life, more fulfillment, a better idea of God's view of them, a better view of themselves. What I'm saying is there's like scientific evidence to prove what the Bible has always taught us, which is to pray continually, spend time in prayer, talk to God. Like the stuff we talk about at church all the time, well, science has caught up with that and said, hey, actually, people who do this are healthier. People who do this have more compassion. People who do this have a stronger faith. Science is telling us what God has been telling us all along, which makes sense because God created us with Him in mind. We were created for a relationship with God. And so my challenge to you in this whole series is to develop a consistent prayer life, because not only is it good for you, but it will help ground your faith in reality when it might otherwise feel abstract and not necessarily real to you. So oftentimes I mentioned when I prayed, I felt like I would miss the bar. I felt like maybe I didn't know what to say, or maybe when I did say something, I was miscommunicating it. How many of you have ever prayed before and you felt like, did that one count? Did I do that right? And it's kind of like, I just for some silly examples, I brought up some texts that were misinterpreted. Maybe you guys have seen some of these. One of them says, I'm here for you. And the person responds, thanks. I'm going through a tough time, so that means a lot. And sorry, I lost all my contacts. Who is this? This is your Uber driver. I'm here to pick you up. Oh, right? You get, because she thought this person says, I'm here for you, like in an encouraging, like sympathetic way. And it turns out this person was he was just literally physically here for you to drive you from point A to point B. Kind of a letdown. But sometimes we feel like our prayer life is like that, like we mean one thing, or maybe God means something, but maybe our wires are crossed, it's being communicated wrong. How about this one? This is an old one. This is a mom texting her kid. What does IDK, LY, and TTYL mean? The kid says, I don't know, love you, talk to you later. And mom says, okay, I'll ask your sister. No, it literally means, I don't know, love you, and talk to you later. But when we're not on the same wavelength, when we're not communicating efficiently, when we don't understand each other, like the meaning gets missed. And oftentimes that's how we feel in our prayer lives. Like maybe, did that one count? God, did you hear me right? Am I hearing you right? And sometimes it feels like we're not really communicating effectively with God. Maybe what we were praying for, the opposite happened, and we're like, God, did you get my direct message? Did I send that wrong? Right? Are we communicating on the same wavelength? And that's how prayer can often feel to us. It feels frustrating. And so we're going to get into some practical ways, like I said, that you can pray and you can start today to improve your prayer life. Because not only will it help make your life better, but it will help you have an active and real relationship with your Creator, which will in turn affect every other area of your life. So, we're going to be in the book of Matthew today, and Matthew was one of Jesus' disciples who wrote the book of Matthew, or it's actually just a document compiling the life and ministry of Jesus that Matthew compiled for his fellow Jews to understand that Jesus is the King that was promised by the prophets of old. And we're going to be in the section called the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus was teaching all these profound teachings. And this is what he said, because his disciples were asking him, they noticed Jesus prayed differently than all the other teachers they had been around. And so they asked Jesus, how do you pray? They want to know how to pray like Jesus. And Jesus says this in Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 9. He says, "This then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread and forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one." How many of you guys have heard this before? This is the Lord's Prayer, right? Some people pray this verbatim, which is fine. But Jesus is literally teaching them how to pray. In other words, he's giving them a format to use when they pray. He's saying, this is how you should pray. And so when his disciples ask, how should we pray? Jesus says, this is how you should pray. He gives them that format. But basically, to summarize what we talked about last week, and what Jesus was basically saying up to this point, is he's saying, be real and be consistent. These are important things that you should do. Be real and be consistent. And then to get into the how-to, he says basically that whole Lord's Prayer can be boiled down to 3 words, okay? You ready? First of all, start with thanks, right? Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Basically, you are holy, you are good. It's these words of affirmation, recognizing who God is and why we're thankful for that. What are you thankful for? Thanks. Then there's the please section, right? Give us this day our daily bread. Like, it's requests. God, please help me with this, help with that, help with this situation, be in that. And so it starts with thanks. It has the please part. And then at the end it says the sorry part. The forgive us our debtors as we've also forgiven those who sinned against us. So forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And so there's this format that we see in the Lord's Prayer. There's the thanks, please, and sorry. Now, if you've ever gone to pray and you don't have the words to say, this is basically a format that you can start. For some of you, you'll get through this in like 60 seconds the first time you do it. Thanks for my food. Thanks for the roof over my head. Thanks for another day of life. Please help me with my homework and all my tests. And for the girl that I asked out to say yes. And then, sorry for when I fail you and when I make mistakes and I did that one thing. Amen. And your prayer will be really quick. But the more you do it, the more it's going to come naturally for you. And the more your anterior cingulate is going to be developing, which means it's like a muscle that you have to work out. And the more you do this, the stronger it's going to get. And so your thank you part will eventually itself take up to 10 minutes. And then the please part, well, there's a lot that I need help with. And that's going to take a while. And then the sorry part, as you are suddenly realizing all the things that God has been trying to communicate to you all along, you're going to understand and realize, and he's going to open your eyes to things in your own life that you weren't even realizing. And you're going to realize, oh, I'm sorry for that. Help me. And you're going to start to see things from God's perspective. Your heart is going to start changing. Your mind is going to be renewed as you start to transform your life through prayer. And as God enters into your life through prayer, he is going to renew you and transform you into a version of yourself that you didn't even know was possible. But it all starts with prayer. And so with this simple format, using the Lord's Prayer, you can go thanks, please, sorry. And that format will help you to jumpstart your prayer life. Now, this isn't everything, right? You can get more detailed if you want. But this is a starting point that if you start with this, you're never going to run out of things to pray for. Right? It's eventually going to get to the point where communing with God, communicating and talking with God is going to feel natural because you're doing it habitually. You're going to do it often. It's going to be consistent in your life. And so doing that is going to make this come all that much more easier. And then suddenly you're going to find yourself praying for other people, being thankful for the other people in your life. And it's going to change you. It's not only going to change you in your relationship with God, it's going to change the way you see other people. Right? Somebody once told me, and I've always remembered this growing up, it's hard to be mad at somebody that you're praying for. How many, when somebody does something wrong to you, and it hurts, and you're angry, and you're bitter towards that person, like, that's our knee-jerk reaction, that's natural, that's normal. Try praying for that person, and it's really hard to stay angry at them, because you start to see them with God's eyes. So prayer not only changes yourself and your own heart and your relationship with God, but it changes the way you see other people, which helps you to have better relationships because you're not holding to the ugliness, you're holding to the good. Prayer does that. It's powerful. And the more you do it, the more easy it will get. So if I were to encourage you with anything, it would just be to realize that prayer is not about the words that you say, but about the way you pray. And the more often you do it, I'm telling you, the easier it's going to get. The more it's going to transform your life. Now, I'm not saying that, if you pray and then all your problems are going to go away. Like, you'll still have problems. But this is kind of why we need to pray. If you grow your anterior cingulate to the point to where like it counteracts the amygdala, well, that doesn't mean you're never going to struggle with anxiety or anything like that. That's still a reality. But the foundation is your relationship with God. And if you spend time in that prayer, that does trickle down into every other part of your life. So start there. Now, for some people, that completely takes away any anxiety or depression or anything that they felt before. That's great. For others, it just diminishes it a lot, which is also great. For others, there's more steps to take. God has given us a lot of tools. Okay? So spend time with God's people in community. Be real with God's people in community. Pray for each other, build each other up, and spend time with God in prayer. It's not about the words you say, but how you pray that will make all the difference. So if I were to encourage you to do 3 things, just 3 steps to take, it would be 1, to write down those words, the thank you, please, and sorry. Okay? Remember those and try to pray using those. Secondly, be real with God, kind of like we talked about last week. Don't just pray empty words and recite things because that's what you've heard other people do. Be real. Talk to God the way you would talk to your friends. And lastly, be consistent. This third part is so important. Even if it only starts with once or twice a week, start there because that's probably better than where you're at now, doing it none times a week. And if you are praying 2 or 3 times a week, try to make it 4 or 5. Try to work your way up to where you pray every day as just a form of habit. You don't even think about it. When you see somebody in the hallway that looks like something's off, your first thought isn't, oh, I wonder what's wrong with them. Your first thought is, God, please be with them. Transform your mind by being consistent and consistently with God. It's not about the words you say, but the way that you pray. So, as you guys get ready to go to your small group, okay, I want you to think about this question. Think about this question. What's one thing that might keep you from giving prayer a try in your life? If you've tried to pray, or if you've not tried to pray, and you've come across obstacles, what's one thing that might keep you from giving that a better try, another try, or giving it maybe a first try? What are the obstacles in your life to giving prayer a try? Think about that, okay? I'm going to pray for you. We'll be dismissed into our small groups, and then I'll see you back here next week, okay?